let me bring you in here because I think the youth are the biggest consumers of social media. In the current context where most African countries are trying to regulate the use of social media, especially during elections, what do you think? What do you think should be done to address the misuse of social media, especially during elections? What because the doctor talks about the balance between security and development objectives, but what practically what should be done? Unmute.
Oh, yes. So thank you. That's a problem of technology, Okay, thank you so much. On the basis of the question that you asked, yeah, like what should be done, personally, I say it, and I will always say it. Where comes the fears during the election? We see the internet shut down. We see number of laws. We see number of acts have been imposed or enacted during the election, specifically to
Did I lose Yusuf? Um, Yusuf, again, you're having a poor connection. Okay, I think I lost Yusuf on that one. Uh, Peter, can you hear me now? So that I can bring you on call. Peter, can you hear me? Unmute Peter so that I can make sure that you can hear me. Okay. As we digitize and embrace ICT, Africa will still have those challenges of connection. You can even see how they affect this kind of discussion. I hope I can have Peter on call again.
yes,
Yusuf, you're back on.
yeah.
Please proceed.
Yes, of course. I was trying to say that where comes the fear, we impose number of regulations. We impose number of laws nearby the election, specifically to limit the use of the social media with this kind of syndrome or notion that when we're not regulating the use of social media, then the violations will come. I think these are minds. I'm telling you personally. I'm saying that they're not even right because if we are regulating it during the election, what about the other time? Don't we have any other issues? Don't you even afraid of those kind of violations before the elections? Or the only period of election is the period that we see number of violence. So to me, I see it as a thing that our governments are really afraid of. But in reality, the violation can come even if after the election or before the election. So we have to stop imposing these kind of laws, imposing this kind of acts so as we can regulate the use of social media during the election. So what should be done? So for me, I say what should be done is we have to let people do the social media because speaking of the art of not artists, there are articles, there are laws which are speaking on the freedom of information, to access information and stuff like that, right? Freedom of expression and stuff like that one. Whereby a number of our countries, Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya, Rwanda, all over the world, who are members of the United Nations through the Universal Declaration of Human Rights have been ratified and signed it. So we would agree that every human being has a right to express himself, access information. Then I don't think that it is right to impose this kind of laws to regulate the use of social media during the election because even after the election or even before the election, people consider the social media to make sure that they do this kind of violation. For me, I see it as a bad syndrome that we're having, and what should be done is we have to let people use their freedom of expression. We have to let people use their constitutional rights to access information as well as using the social media and not imposing these kind of laws. For instance, here in Tanzania, in 20, I think during the fifth regime, the government had been imposing two two laws. The first one, it was specifically regulating the use of social media, and we're seeing number of young activists have been victimized through this kind of laws. Not only that, but also the Media Act, whereby you've seen number of newspapers and online media where have been banned through this kind of acts that have been enacted during the period of election. So to me, I think we don't have to get this kind of fear that when we let people accessing information, when we let young people, of course, targeting was for young people. So, for instance, when we let young people accessing information, debating on the social media, raising concerns, the issue of fear or the issue of violence can come. So, for me, I don't think that should be a thing. And what should be done is we have to let people accessing their rights, as has been mentioned according to our constitution, as far as from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, whereby every human had the right to access as far as to use the kind of any kind of information by not breaking any kind of laws in our nation. So I don't see where our nations have this kind of fear. Of course, for the first time in Tanzania, we've seen such kind of things happen. We never seen the internet shut down during the election, but during the 2020 election, for the first time, I'm telling you, the internet was shut down, and we young activists were highly affected because our social media handles, our social media accounts were even banned during the electoral processes, just because we are trying to give out information for young people and influencing them to fully participate in electoral processes. So to me, I see like this syndrome, we really have to let people, specifically young people, to access the information as per the constitutional rules, constitutions, as far as for other international convention whereby our country has been ratified and signed. So I think that's what should be done, and we don't have to embrace this kind of fear during the election, because violence can even come after the election. So why are we strictly prohibiting or regulating the use of social media during the election? So I think that's my response on the basis of the question that you've been asking me, Felix.
All right, thank you so much, Yusuf. Interesting. I'm going to bring in here Florence. I think you may want to weigh in as the person on the other end, how social media makes your work quite difficult, but also as you make a contribution on that discussion. Also, another question that I would want you to help us out there answer is around who ideally is responsible for ensuring that citizens access information during the electoral process.
Oh, thank you so much. And I was listening to my brother Yusuf, and I was just smiling. And I really wanted to get an opportunity to just share just a small comment on this. Of course, the media is a very critical, one very critical platform whereby we exchange information. And when you talk of social media in particular, because we have the mainstream media and the social media. And now the focus you can hear is around the social media, because regulation is a bit weak there. And we're not saying there's anything wrong with the young people sharing what they want to share. But it's very important to use some of these platforms, which are real-time online, with a lot of responsibility. The difference between the mainstream media is that there is an editor somewhere who will look at the content and will even give a disclaimer whether the viewership is okay for everybody, is general, or it is available for children not to watch, or don't watch with their family. But when social media comes, it comes as a bank for everybody. You're seated there with the child, you are seated there with their family, and things just come. And that's where the concern now comes, because there are lots of benefits, for sure, I can tell you. Even as an office, we have a lot of social media platforms that we are using that have really helped us, even sensitize the citizens on the work we do, and the new reforms that we have put on board. But if I tell you one thing that we have agreed, even as a country, looking at history and saying history should never repeat itself again in this country. One thing we have agreed is responsible media reporting, responsible media information sharing on the media. Because when we looked back, we picked that was one of the contributors, even for our post-election violence in 2008. One of the biggest contributors. That somebody sees something and then they share it immediately, irrespective of where it will land and the emotions it will arouse and the response people will give to that kind of piece of information that they are sharing. And one thing that I want to say here is that unlike the other events and unlike the other situations that happen before the general election or any election, a general election is a cross-cutting event. It's happening across the country. It's unlike any other event that is happening in a country that you have a conference happening in one city and not in the other city. When you're talking about elections, they are happening across the country. So when there is an emotion aroused at one corner, there is a member of a political party in another corner, there is a supporter of a certain candidate in another corner, and it sparks a bushfire very fast. So it's very important that the use of social media then be checked for that reason that this can spark a bushfire within no time. The second thing is these supporters, because we have the code of conduct, the elections code of conduct. When there is an election misconduct, these social media users, some of them have no faces. So who do you pin down? How do you identify this is of this candidate, and therefore if they have breached the code, then the candidate takes responsibility or the party takes responsibility, because these users, some of them have no faces, some of them are cross boundaries. So how do you reach out to them in whichever legal jurisdiction they are in for you to say, now come and face the law in this country? So it's very important where we are dealing with faceless people. Because these are human beings, yes, but at the face value, they are faceless. You cannot pin them down. You cannot get hold of anybody and tell a candidate, this your supporter is misbehaving, tone them down or take responsibility for them. So it's very important. But as I come to the question, there's something I wanted to mention very briefly about the conduct of an election. The conduct of an election to a large extent depends on the competency, professionalism, and the technical ability of the officials that are actually handling the election process. And in most cases, we are talking about the people who are serving in either that polling station or those who are going to tally and declare the results. Now, what we've done is recruiting those officials way in advance. For example, the advertisement for recruitment of election officials in Kenya was done around April. Yeah, so people have already applied. The recruitment is ongoing so that there's sufficient time for their training. And also, once they've been selected, then their names are pinned up. They are put in the website in public places so that if a person has a concern about the integrity, the professionalism, the competence ability of that particular official, then they can raise it in good time and say, we don't think this particular person can conduct a credible election, knowing them, who they are, because we live in communities and societies. Also, the returning officers, you've been working in one area, an electoral area for 3-4 years. When you're about to start the electoral final activities, then they're reshuffled. At least 6 months to the elections, and in Kenya, I think they're reshuffled around March. They were shuffled so that you're not going to work in a place where everybody knows you. You've been talking to some people in the evenings, and sometimes in your house, in the bars. You're getting very close to some of the competitors and some of the candidates and some of those who are financing, but you're going to be a neutral party because you have gone there for only one job, to conduct an election. So together, all these factors put into a platform for conducting an election, then it helps eliminate some of the issues that can bring about question marks on the integrity of the process. But I don't think we can write a Bible, even as Africa. I don't think we can write a Bible and say, if things are done like this exactly, then we are going to have the issues of integrity completely eliminated, because it's a matter of culture. It's a matter of ethical conduct by the person making a choice and saying, when I get this job, I will do exactly what's supposed to be done in that position. Because I don't think there's anybody who gives an official work to do in an election to say, when you're typing the results, type them wrongly like this. When you're assisting a voter, when they tell you to mark for X, mark for Y. I don't think there is not anybody in the Electoral Commission who will induct an electoral official in that manner. So it is about the competency, the professionalism, yes, but also good timing so that they can be given the necessary skills, and also to making sure that we are building a culture of ethical conduct as a people. And actually, that is the new gospel we've started to preach in Kenya. We might not be able to have everybody converted by 2022, but we are hoping that as we progress, we will have more converts on the right side than on the left side. Coming back to the question, I will ask Felix. I was writing, but I did not get the question completely. You were asking who is the custodian of.
The question was ideally who is responsible for ensuring that citizens access information during the electoral process? Because there are many actors in the process, but where does the buck stop in terms of who should be held responsible for citizens to access information related to elections?
Thank you so much. Now I think it's clear. I've gotten the question, but now it's much clearer. I want to say this: every institution that serves as a duty bearer is serving under their specific mandate. I'll tell you, like for example, this office, the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties, will register and regulate political parties, and therefore this office is not answerable to the Electoral Commission, because the Electoral Commission is a duty bearer but with its own mandate. We also have the commission responsible for dealing with hate speech and the cohesion issues in this country. It has its own act of parliament and it serves its own mandate. And so on and so forth, and many other, including the security, because we cannot talk elections, peaceful elections, credible elections without the security element. What we've done is coming up with a multi-agency kind of a platform whereby all the duty bearers speak to each other, agree, then they report, give a report of their preparedness, what they're doing, including sharing of information, including access to information with regard to the information they're holding. Remember earlier on when I was talking about operationalizing and giving effect to Article 35 of the Constitution of Kenya, which talks to the issue of access of information, is that every act of parliament creating an office or creating a mandate for an institution then makes provision for access to information. So then every institution is bound by their act, even as we go back to the Constitution, to allow, to make provision for access to information. And therefore, we cannot say when it comes to an election, then all these offices will have to report to the Electoral Commission for the purposes of giving information, because no office loses their independence during a certain activity that is steered by one office. So everybody is guided by the law. And if every institution observes the law, because there's a provision, as I said, that speaks to the access to information, and they observe their own act that creates that office, and therefore play their role effectively in that multi-agency kind of an arrangement, then every one of those agencies and institutions will avail information, will allow for access of information by the members of public, by whoever needs that information, because it's already a requirement even within the act that creates them. Because otherwise, it will become very difficult to have a CEO of one entity reporting to a CEO of another entity. That means you make one CEO subordinate to another CEO. That would even create its own complex reporting structure. So we have just worked with that always. Everybody within your act and within the role you play, then provide the information that you're supposed to give. But within that, as I said, that multi-agency framework, then everybody gives a report. And then there's a platform whereby we go and report on our level of preparedness. And then the Mwananchi is given an opportunity to also voice their concerns where they feel one agency could be derailing or holding back the other by not availing the necessary information that they should. The other issue on information, which I was waiting to hear, I've not had, is that sometimes it's not an issue of information completely being withheld, but it's an issue of information, one, being given out but not complete. Information that is being given out and is not complete, it cannot help. Yeah. Number two, information being given out when it is too late, and therefore it adds no value in the process because the information then it is available, but there is no time to apply or to process and utilize that information. The other thing about the same information again is when the information is availed, but then in a way that is not accessible to everybody. Once upon a time, we had a constitution that had not been translated, had a constitution in English, and almost 70% of the population were illiterate. So when you have a constitution in English and 70% of your population is illiterate, really you have hidden their rights and freedoms because they cannot read for themselves and understand unless somebody takes the burden to sensitize them on the contents. So that is also another issue. And that's why I was talking of a framework. Because we cannot just make a demand, but within the framework, then we can be able to make some significant steps. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Florence. That has been quite very insightful. Henry, do I have you on call? Is Henry on call? I have Yusuf, but I don't know whether I have Henry Kasasha. Henry Kasasha on call. Okay, I don't have Henry. Is Doctor on call? Okay, they're not on call. Let me come to you, Yusuf. You know, when you talk about electoral violence or election violence, it's mainly the youths that are caught up in this wave of election violence. I think you'll appreciate that. So, and help us here understand whether, to what extent can access to information actually play a significant role in addressing or mitigating election violence.
Sorry, Felix. I just missed a little bit. Can you repeat your question, please?
My question was around how access to information, especially relevant information, can be used to address or avert election violence, looking at the fact that it's mainly youths that participate in election violence.
Okay. Thank you a lot for the question. Of course, as we've been mentioning earlier here, that when it comes to election violence or electoral violence, young people have been at the forefront, and sometimes maybe willingly, like young people are going in front for it, or other people like these politicians who have their own interest there. They're just using or backing young people to go in front while they're just sitting there at their home with their family, watching the show, whereby young people are in front to do this kind of violation and stuff like that, like killing, destruction of properties and stuff like that. And so, how the access to information, not only access to information, relevant access to information can help us avoiding this kind of electoral violence and stuff like that one. Of course, in Swahili, there is a quote which we always say that ukitaka kumtawala mtu mnyime maarifa. Like in English, we say it like if you want to rule somebody, or if you want to colonize somebody, just not give him information, the information that he needs, like at what time, maybe to do what kind of things, 1, 2, 3, 4 things has to be in this way, on that way, and stuff like that one. So that means it's going to be very, very easy for you guys to rule or to colonize that kind of person. It's like a level of the cave, Those who are in the cave, they see nothing. But those who are outside the cave sees a lot of things like exposure and stuff like that. And so, if young people have the relevant information, like the informations which are needed and helpful for the society, not only society but also themselves and stuff like that one. A lot of things can be avoided. For instance, number of young people who are going to those kind of violence, most of them are the ones with no sort of big responsibility behind them. For instance, if you have a family, you have a children, you have people who are depending on you, then it is very, very hard to see you going in front to do this kind of violation. As far as we know, during these electoral processes, our government are going to are normally using the cohesive apparatus such as police, and army to make sure that they are going to combat on any sort of indication for the violence. So I think when young people are fully empowered, not only empowered, they are fully equipped or given information which are very relevant to them. We'll see number of them not going in front and stuff like that one. For instance, when you impose this kind of acts and laws to regulate the freedom of expression, freedom of accessing for information, we young people think that there are things which are being done on the back door to make sure that a certain political party is going to win, while our party or people whom we are supporting are not even going to be backed up. And this is mostly done by the ruling party, which is also going to contest in the various elections. So I think we have to reduce these kind of symptoms. We have to reduce these kind of issues, such as enactment of laws, which are giving us an insight that there might be some sort of indication that the elections are not credible enough, or maybe the elections are not free and fair, and that's why young people, you see them going in front, either willingly or by being used by those kind of folks during the electoral process. So speaking of that, to me, what I can say is relevant informations, transparency. If it's there, then we won't see young people are being in front for this kind of violence. But if you see any sort of indications, one political party to be favored enough, while the information that we need, we don't even get it, then probably we'll see number of young people or majority of young people going in front to conduct this kind of violence. So one thing that I can say, it's it depends on the situations and stuff like that one. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Yusuf. We have 15 minutes to get out of here. If there are any questions or comments coming through, they will be flashed on the screen. I'll be able to throw them to any of the panelists. But I think so far, my producer may help me pick out some of the questions, comments that are coming through. I'll be able to read them. But as of now, I think we are coming to the tail end, and I'm going to be being more strict on time, 2 minutes each, as we come to a close. As your departing remarks, it's more about, and I'll start with, I hope Doctor is on call. I'll start with Doctor. Moving forward, what can be done to improve access to information during elections? And Doctor is not on. Is Doctor on call? Okay, Doctor. Yeah. As we come to a close, what can be done to improve access to information during elections? In 2 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Doctor, proceed.
Hello?
We can hear you, Doctor. Proceed.
Oh, okay. No, so I mean, quick comments for me. Basically to say that certainly the environments have changed. There are challenges, but I really feel that we can work on it. I've seen very good examples from the Ghana EFB, what they did in the 2020 elections, what the police did in 2020 election using social media, did very well to mount a platform where they can share information. I think it's just to say that we know that elections are always high stakes. It's important to be very clear, very specific as to what everybody should expect, what kind of information everybody should receive, the rules around the electoral process, and share as much information as can be shared proactively. And if we do those things, I think a lot of these problems will surmount them. They are challenging, but we can overcome them. I think the issue about culture is that yes, we don't have that culture, but it's one we can develop, and we maybe start that as soon as possible. Develop a culture of transparency and accountability, both for citizens and for public agencies and public officers.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for that humble submission. Let me come to you. Let me come to you, Florence. As we come to the close of this discussion, what do you think are the practical recommendations on how we can improve access to information during elections? I think you're muted.
Sorry, I'm muted. Thank you so much. I would say that yes, we need to enforce, and we need to continue creating an enabling environment. Of course, each country looking at a very specific situation, but speaking for this country, which I believe is also partly applicable to others, is that we have a solid anchor in our constitution that has already provided for access to information. And in fact, people access a lot of information in this country. When you're a celebrity, you have thousands and even sometimes millions of followings, meaning people accessing information. The question is, are they accessing the necessary information at a time like this when we are preparing and approaching an election? A lot of the times, most of us, we find electoral related information head cracking, very difficult to process, or we just want to find something exciting. There are few of us who really follow closely, but a majority of us, we find it, mind cracking, and therefore we are easily carried away, by people who read, give us propaganda, and distort that information in a way that is convenient to them. And then we end up receiving propaganda through social media or through political forums where there are campaigns happening, and we carry that for the gospel truth. What I would want to say is this. Some of the legislations we have are sufficient. What we need is people to develop the culture of accessing information. Communication is two-way. Information access takes both. The person who is supposed to release that information, that is to disclose and be proactive in the disclosure, but also the recipient must be willing to receive that information and process it to be of use to them. But sometimes we want somebody to open the doors of their offices wide open so that we see how they're working, or they put their offices in the open ground for us to say, we see how they're working and therefore they're transparent. That is not transparency. That is a security exposure. So people must also seek information when it is there so that they can access when it is availed. That to me is a very big problem, that we don't, even when the information has been put out there, we do not go for that information so that we can be empowered. A lot of Kenyans today, even some candidates, they are contesting. We have been putting information all over in websites, including young people. They have been calling me until today to ask me, when are we going for the clearance, registration of candidates? That information was put in the newspapers, in the websites, and the people were called for a briefing session. They ignored the meeting. Today, they have no information. They're crying foul. We don't know when we are going for the registration. So I am challenging both those who are supposed to share information, but also those who need to receive the information. For them to be effectively empowered, they should also receive and process that information effectively. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You remind me of the fact that some people have argued that the formats through which information is disseminated can also be a bit challenging, but that's the debate for another day. I think I lost Yusuf. I wanted Yusuf to give us his departing remarks. I don't know if Yusuf is on call. Is Henry on call? Because we are coming to the tail end of this discussion. If none of them is on call, I'm going to have to bring this to a close. But you've been watching the monthly webinar series for ACFIM, probably brought to you by ACFIM, a political finance watchdog on money in politics. Yes, and we had with me, I had a cocktail of panelists. I had Dr. Kojo Asante from Ghana, who is the current director of advocacy and policy engagement at CDD. CDD Ghana, which is Center for Democratic Development. Then I also with me, I had Yusuf Wango from Tanzania, who is the executive director of Tanzanian Youth Vision Association, TYVA. It's a youth-led organization. Also with me, I had Florence Bira from Kenya, who is the Deputy Registrar of the Office of Registrar of Political Parties. Kenya is right now embroiled in an election season. Come August, they are going to the polls. I had Henry Kasasha, who is, I think we lost him along the way, who is also the current director of Dialogue and Democracy Training Center. Was really glad to have you be part of this discussion. We had briefly Peter from Zambia, who joined us but had a connection challenges. Peter is an elections expert. He's currently the program manager for the Christian Churches Monitoring Group. We did miss most of his contribution, but he was part of the panelists that have been lined up to enrich this discussion. And I, Felix Kafuma, have been moderating today's session. Thank you so much for being part of this important discussion as Africa seems to embrace elections as the most sure way of electing leaders. We also need to look at what makes our electoral process not fall short of integrity. Till next time, same place. Bye-bye. Stay safe. God bless.